Uh, it, Hello everyone, it's me, Aaron, Professor Thorgi, your guide to all things geeky, and I'm here today with another Thorgi Reviews. Now today, we're going to be talking about Batman vs. Superman, and this film has been getting a lot of kind of controversial reviews, but I'm here to give you the honest opinion about I can't do this! I can't! I'm living a lie! I can't just sit here and pretend like everything's okay. I can't pretend like this movie didn't horrifically affect me in numerous ways. I can't just sit here and keep this charade up. It's not good. It wasn't good. Not good at all. Now, before I begin with my review, I just want to make something very clear, which is that, yes, I'm going to be pretty negative on this movie. In fact, I'm going to be kind of harsh on it. However, I'm not coming in here and saying, oh, this is the worst thing ever. This is not the worst thing ever. I've seen far worse. Heck, I mentioned in my worst movies of 2015 list that every single year for the past 5 or 6 years, I have always made it a tradition to watch some of the worst movies of the year just so I can cleanse my palate. And so that way when I do see a really bad movie, such as this, that it allows me to see the good in it. It allows me to look at it and not just view it as one big, oh my gosh, it's so terrible kind of film. And I do see some positives in here, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that I have seen worse things. This is not the worst movie ever. This isn't even the worst superhero film of the last year. Fantastic Four, brother. Do not forget Fantastic Four. And this doesn't even hold a candle to any of those other films that were on my worst movies of 2015 list, like 50 Shades of Grey or Jim and the... You know what, I learned my lesson. I'm not going to say that movie's name ever again. We're not ever summoning that demon back. And also, before I begin, I'd like to say that I fully realize there are a lot of you out there who did enjoy this movie. You did really like it. And kudos to you on that. I'm glad that you saw something that you enjoyed, something that meant something to you, something that you found exciting and uplifting or enjoying or dramatic or tense. I'm glad that you saw something that you enjoyed. And I'm not going to try and take that away from you. If that's how you felt, then that's awesome. I'm not here to try and convince you to come over to my side. In fact, a lot of you even told me on Twitter that you did like this, and you were very respectful. You were very polite. You didn't go off on some rant. You were very eloquent and you told me exactly how you felt, and you did it far better than I did when I was ranting on Twitter about this. So I'm just saying this because if you felt that way, great, but brother, there ain't anything else in this review for you. Yeah, you're not going to enjoy any part of this, so you might want to just click on another video. There are tons of other fine programs here on the Professor Thorgi channel for you to enjoy, so please look around, because you're not going to like what I have to say. And I just want to make it very clear, I'm not saying all this, and I'm not being this negative because I think it will make for the best review, or because it's what's popular. It's not because, oh, I'll get a lot of hits if I talk smack about this movie. Everything I'm about to say, I guarantee you, is coming straight from the heart. Now, before I begin, I will say that this is a spoiler-free review. Kind of. What I mean by that is that I'm going to talk about some things, but the only real big stuff from the movie that I will reveal is the stuff that we have seen in the trailers. And you might be saying, oh, well, how is that kind of a spoiler? Well, funny story. You know how when you saw those trailers, you went, oh my god, you just spoiled the entire movie to us. And then Zack Snyder and Warner Brothers came out and went, oh, we're laughing. Oh, you don't know. You don't even know. Oh, no. There is so much more in this movie that you haven't seen. You haven't even seen half the movie yet. We have so many big things on the way. No, they didn't. Everything that you saw in those trailers, that's the majority of this movie. You have already seen pretty much every major plot point and every big spectacle scene in this movie. They were all in those trailers. Doomsday? Yeah, he's the big bad guy at the end of this movie. There is no Lex Luthor mech suit. There is no Brainiac popping in at the end. There is no Darkseid making an appearance. None of that. It's all Doomsday there. And the Batman-Superman fight scene, you've seen about 90% of it in those trailers. It is a short fight and you've seen almost all of it. And you know that awesome action scene involving Batman taking out all all of those goons in the last trailer that made us all look at it and go, oh my gosh, we're finally going to get the martial arts Batman master that we've always wanted. Yes, you will. In that one scene that you have seen in that trailer, and you saw about 75% of it. This is one of those rare times in which however you felt about those scenes when you saw them in the trailers is pretty much how you're going to feel about them when you see them in the movie, because you've already seen them. In fact, you didn't need any additional context of those scenes, because the context that you do get in this movie, if anything, it might take away from those moments. Now, there is one other thing that I will bring up that is a bit of a spoiler, but I have to mention it, and only happens 5 minutes into the movie. It is early into this film, and to me, if it happens within the first 5 minutes, it's not even really a spoiler. However, I do have to bring it up because it is the basis for a lot of the plot and a lot of the other things that happen in this movie, including a lot of my problems with this movie. However, if you do want to hear me discuss spoilers for this movie, my wife and I just got done recording our post-geek reaction for it. Now, if you're new to this channel, the post-geek reaction is a brand new thing that we've been trying out on this channel. You guys seem to have been enjoying it, but it's basically what's replaced the spoiler talk on this channel. It's when my wife and I sit down and just have an open and honest discussion about how we felt about the thing that we just watched, full spoilers on, and we try and cover as many things as we want to talk about. And with the reviews, they're a little bit more professional. With the reviews, I sit down and I write out a script that will portray my feelings about the thing I'm reviewing to the best of my abilities. However, with the post-geek reactions, we're just bullshitting. We're just having fun, and we're just trying to talk openly about how we felt about this thing, and we're trying to cover as much as we can. And for the Batman vs. Superman post-geek reaction, we went on for more than an hour. That thing ran so long because there were so many things we wanted to talk about. In fact, I even came back afterwards to keep talking about things because there's so many dumb things that just raise questions. You know what? Let's start the review. I'm in the mood to talk about this now. Okay, let's start with a couple of the positives, shall we? First off, this movie begins by showing you the destruction of Metropolis from Bruce Wayne's point of view, and they actually captured that really well. They let you, as the audience, feel that fear, feel that panic. They let you know how terrifying that would be if you were an everyday person on the street when all this went down. They actually do capture that incredibly well. And the big fight scene at the end of this movie, that's actually pretty darn cool. I gotta admit that. It is pretty darn cool. I criticize Zack Snyder on a lot of things, but when it comes to shooting action, that dude knows how to frame a shot. And yeah, this entire fight scene looks really cool. There are some great uses of their powers. Everything's set up pretty darn well. Shot-wise, at least. And as far as Ben Affleck as Batman goes, listen, to anybody out there still hating, you got nothing to worry about, alright? Ben Affleck is the least of your concerns. He is the best actor and the best character in this entire movie. In fact, I've always liked the Batman that we've gotten in live action movies before, but I never thought any of them were great. Christian Bale, Michael Keaton, I'll even go with Val Kilmer. I thought they were all good Batman. I thought they were all good Bruce Waynes, but I never thought they were great. And honestly, I don't know if I would call Ben Affleck great, but he's as close to great as we've gotten before. And Jeremy Irons' Alfred was fantastic. He nailed every scene, and every moment he was on screen, he was instantly the most likable thing about that scene. Thinking about that makes me really look forward to seeing that Ben Affleck Batman and that Jeremy Irons Alfred in their own movie together. I can't wait for that film. Okay, positives over. Okay, let's talk about the story. The story makes no damn sense at all. You know those Senate hearings that you saw in all the trailers, and you saw them when, oh, they're gonna put Superman on trial for the destruction of Metropolis. Oh my goodness, they're finally going to talk about it. You know how you kept going up to people after you defended Man of Steel and said, no, they're gonna talk about that in the next movie. And then you saw the Senate hearings and you're like, see, that's it. That's the thing we were talking about. They're going to bring up the destruction of Metropolis, right? Yeah, no. Nobody in this movie cares about the destruction of Metropolis aside from Batman, one random guy who got his legs crushed, and at one point Lex Luthor, but then later in the movie Lex Luthor hates Superman because he hates gods, then he hates him because his dad hit him as a kid, and then he hates him at the end of the movie for something that ties into Justice League that I won't spoil, but it makes no sense how he would know any of that. Ugh. But aside from them, nobody cares about the destruction of Metropolis. At all. Those Senate hearings? The reasons why they're putting Superman on trial? Okay, this was that spoiler I mentioned that happens 5 minutes into the movie and sets up the rest of the film. You've been warned. They put Superman on trial because 5 minutes into this movie, Lois Lane is interviewing some African warlord. Superman shows up and saves her from this warlord before he kills her. And then, as he's saving her, some soldiers of fortune guys come in and just murder all of the African warlord's men. And then, after they're murdered, some even worse guys come in and start torturing this village. And the Senate looks at that and goes, oh, well, clearly Superman murdered these people with bullets. And he doesn't care. You know, Superman, murdering people with bullets, that's totally what he does, right? That's the thing he's known for, right? I mean, that S on his chest, it stands for bullet, right? Yeah, come on, we all know that. So that's why they decide to put him on trial. Not the destruction of Metropolis. I mean, that gets brought up at one point. I will admit it gets brought up at one point by that random guy who got his legs crushed, so it's not like it's totally ignored. But the reason they're putting him on trial is because they think he shot someone. Not only does this not make any sense, but it hit me about halfway through those Senate hearings. What exactly is your plan here? Seriously, what are you hoping to accomplish with these Senate hearings? Are you going to tell Superman, oh, we find it so that you can no longer save people? He's Superman. Not only is he all-powerful, but he's also an alien, and you have no idea what his citizenship is. You don't have the power, nor the authority, to enforce anything on him, really. And another mild spoiler, but it turns out that those Soldier of Fortune guys were hired by a mysterious figure. And if you haven't figured out who that figure is yet, then welcome to your first Superman story, everybody! So, anyway, this mysterious figure, whose name rhymes with Pex Puther, decides that he wants Batman and Superman to fight each other. It's never really explained why he has a problem with Batman, but he wants them to fight each other. So, he sets up that, so he can set up the next part of his plan. So he can set up the next part of his plan. So he can set up the next part of his plan. It's like this 10-part plan and half the steps don't even make sense. But here's the biggest problem with it. At the end of the movie, when it comes time for them to fight, it dawned on me. You could have not had Lex Luthor in this movie at all and it wouldn't have changed anything. There's no need for Lex Luthor to try and get these guys to fight. Batman already wants to stop Superman because he's apparently the only person who remembers that Metropolis happened, and Superman wants to stop Batman because he's branding people and, as we see later in the film, murdering them. No, I'm not kidding you, Batman murders in this movie. You remember how upset you were with Superman killing Zod at the end of the last one? Oh, Batman makes that look like nothing in this one. He is taking people out left and right, and I don't mean in that Arkham Asylum way, which is like, oh man, he hit that guy so hard, I don't think he's just knocked out. Man, you really took that guy down. I think he's probably dead. No, I mean he blows people up in this one. Not in that dream sequence. I know someone is going to try and say that in the comments down below. No, he blows people up in the real world. So, Superman already wants to stop Batman. Batman already wants to stop Superman. There's no reason why Lex Luthor needs to egg them on to get them to fight. You could have taken Lex out of this movie and been just fine. And considering that this was the Lex that we got, you probably should have. Yes, we were all indeed worried about Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor, just like we were worried about Ben Affleck as Batman. However, for every time in which we were proven wrong, there's another time in which we were proven, sadly, correct. Now, I'm going to try and be positive. I'm going to try and start off positive. And I will say that there were indeed times that I found him menacing. There were. But he's not Lex Luthor. This is a bad interpretation of that character. If he wanted to play a villain, this is far closer to the Riddler, or Arcade from the X-Men, or Johnny Depp's Willy Wonka. He could have been great as any of those villains. However, as Lex Luthor, this is a bad interpretation. And I know someone is going to come into the comments and say, oh, well, it might not have been the interpretation of the character that you wanted, but you did say that you found him menacing, so he was still a good villain. Yeah, I did say I found him menacing. At times. I found him menacing at times. The rest of the movie, he was a badly cartoonish character that wasn't just a bad villain. He was just a character I didn't want to see on screen. He was just a character who I wanted to get the hell out of there and go back to the other characters I liked. such as Batman and Alfred and... And speaking of terrible characters, Superman. I don't even like calling this guy Superman, alright, because he is such a bad interpretation. But not just that, he's just a bad character. He is. When you have a character who finds out that people were shot and murdered 5 feet from him without him knowing, and that other people are suffering because these people were shot, and nobody knows who did it, and you're being blamed and you're being put on trial for it, and this character's response to all of that is, I quote, "I don't care about that." How do you expect me to look at this guy with any interest? How do you expect to sell to me that the guy who just said that is a journalist who cares about truth and justice? How do you expect to sell to me that this is a guy who stands for all that is good? And to put the cherry on top of how poorly they know how to write Superman, there comes a moment in which he's going to address everyone's concerns with him, talk about what he stands for, address the destruction of Metropolis, and explain to the world who he is. And when that moment comes, that scene ends before he can say a single word. I kid you not. And when a crisis comes up, a big crisis that would get literally anybody else, especially a journalist, investigating it, what does he do? He just ponders, should I even be Superman? And then he goes out into the world to walk across the planet with his little knapsack over his back, wearing flannel, just like he did for the entire first hour of Man of Steel. It is stunning to me that they know that little about writing Superman, that when something comes up and they have to figure out how he'll react, their only response is, do that thing we did last time. It worked, Ben, right? Do it again. And Henry Cavill, I tried, brother. I did. I tried to defend you. In Man of Steel, I kept saying, hey man, with a better script, this guy actually could be Superman. And after this one, I don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong, they still don't give him squat to do. In Man of Steel, one of my big problems with Superman is that he didn't really talk. That entire film was pretty much other people telling Superman who he was supposed to be, and he so rarely actually spoke up to give his character, you know, character or personality. And in this film, it's exactly the same. Except in this film, the lines that he does have are so wooden. I'm convinced Henry Cavill might only have about 10 minutes of an American accent in him every single day, and as soon as that runs out, they just cut the rest of his lines and go, just replace it with you frowning. Harder. More frowns. Frownier. But who cares about all that, right? Who cares about characters and dialogue? Who cares about any of that stuff? This is called Batman versus Superman. Not Batman and Superman debate club champions. No, this is a big brawl about these two going together. So the big question is the action good? Yeah, as I said, I thought the fight with Doomsday was pretty darn cool. And Batman's got some good moments, even though if you saw most of it in the trailer. But this is going to be my most hated opinion of all. I thought the actual fight between Batman and Superman was kind of a letdown. Partly because it was so short. This fight is over with like that. As I said, you've seen 90% of it in the trailer already. And the other reason why? I don't want to spoil anything, but in a battle with Batman, a guy who has all these gadgets, all this technology, all these resources, and Superman, a guy with this big, bright personality and all these amazing powers, you see one of those characters use a decent amount of those, and the other character use none of those. Again, I won't spoil it all, but in a battle between these two titans, one of them doesn't use any of their abilities. And it was a total letdown. It really felt like I wasn't watching Batman and Superman fight. It felt more like just a fist fight between two dudes. I originally did a Thorgi theory video in which I talked about who actually would win between Batman and Superman, and I took 3 of their classic fights and I analyzed them and broke them each down, and honestly, this was way worse than any of those. I mean, I don't want to just come in here and try and be like, oh, the comics are better, but yeah, the comics were way better on this one. And also, the way that this match ends is so dumb. It's the dumbest thing in this entire movie. Again, that's saying something, but the way that this fight ends is ridiculous. It actually made me say out loud, you gotta be kidding me. And another reason why I didn't really feel that excited about this fight was because of the editing. The editing in this film is atrocious, and I know that some people are going to come in here and say, oh, editing, you don't really notice that. You do when it's bad. When you have good editing, you don't notice it. When you have great editing, you might notice it for a second, like, oh, that was pretty cool. But when you have bad editing, it's as distracting as a crying child in the theater. And this editing is awful. It just jumps back and forth from one thing to the next, not allowing you to get any connection to anything. Good editing goes from A to B to C. This movie felt like A, B, and C were each their own movies happening on different channels, and I was just flipping back and forth between them. Okay, now Superman is being accused of these crimes. Nope, now he's talking to his mom. Oh no, now there's a dream sequence. Wait, now Batman is talking about how his family used to be hunters. Oh, now we're back to the Senate hearing. I think that was Wonder Woman in there. Nope, another dream sequence, and now they fight. The reason why the editing and the writing keep me from feeling any tension between these two is because that in a 2.5 hour long movie called Batman vs. Superman, they talk twice before the big fight. Once as Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne, and I'll admit that scene actually is pretty darn good. However, it is quickly interrupted by Lex, which then deflates all that tension out. And then once again, in which Batman hits Superman with his car, and then they say exactly one sentence to each other before Superman leaves. That's it. I kid you not, this is supposed to get me hyped for the bout of the century. One sentence. That's it. Prize fighters say more smack to each other in the pre-round interviews than these two did. Captain America and Iron Man say more to each other in the 2-minute Civil War teaser than they did in this entire movie. And don't come in here and tell me, oh, but that's the difference. You see, Cap and Tony, they knew each other from previous films. They have a history with each other, whereas this is the first time they ever meet. No, stop, cut it right there, okay? This is a 2.5 hour long movie called Batman vs. Superman. And if you're going to come in here and tell me that in a 2.5 hour long movie called Batman vs. Superman, they only have time to say one sentence to each other before the fight, you are struggling to apologize for this film. And it's not just that we skip over important stuff. It's not just that this movie is jarring. It's that we are leaving out vital information that you need to make a complete movie. I remember in Man of Steel, when Superman killed Zod, and so many people defended that by coming in and going, oh no, don't you see? This is Superman learning to value life by having to take one. I was like, yeah, the thing you just described was nowhere in this movie. You made that up in order to defend what just happened. And the exact same thing is here. In order for you to get a full story, in order for you to totally understand everything that is happening, you have to have made up a fanfic about this movie and judged that. It's kind of like with Age of Ultron. When I reviewed Age of Ultron, I said that there were very important character interactions and very important story developments that are just quickly skipped over in order to get the runtime down. Same thing happens here. However, here's the difference. It's kind of like a puzzle. And you know how sometimes you'll have a puzzle and pieces are missing? Age of Ultron is the puzzle where you go, well, there's a couple chunks in that corner missing. This cat's ear is gone, and there's 3 pieces down at the bottom that are gone, but I can still look at this and tell what it's supposed to be. Batman vs. Superman, there are so many pieces missing from this that the only way you can enjoy it is by just looking at the box art. And if you can hear me saying all this and you think, oh, you're just a Marvel fanboy, you couldn't stand that this movie was dark and mature and serious, you just want it to be jokey and silly. If you hear me saying this and then you go and see this film and that's your reasoning for why people didn't like it, you're grabbing at straws. It's not that this film was mature. It's not that this film was dark. It's that this film was boring, and it thought boring meant dark and mature. This film jumps around so much, you never get a connection to any of these characters, and even if you did, nobody ever emotes, other than Lex Luthor, so nobody feels like they have any passion for anything. And this world, yeah, it is shot dark, but it's shot so dark it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel alive. It doesn't feel like any place you'd care about. And it's not that this world is dark, because I just watched all of Daredevil Season 2. That entire show is darker than anything in this movie, but it feels authentic, it feels real, it feels earned. This movie is dark because it is, because they say it is. You can tell that the people working on this film do not understand how to actually write dark, serious, and mature dialogue. There are so many lines throughout this movie that are supposed to be passionate, or serious, or threatening, or dark, and they're just laughable. They're leaning into that dark so hard, it's a parody of itself. There were so many lines that were supposed to get a huge reaction from the audience, and I kid you not, I heard multiple people trying not to laugh. There was one line from Amy Adams that was supposed to be a very passionate line about her relationship with Superman. And instead I heard it and just went, what the hell does that mean? And then I promise you this is true, as soon as I thought that, someone 2 aisles behind me shouted out, what the hell does that mean? Batman vs. Superman uses dark the way that Batman and Robin used camp. With no idea what it means, no idea how to use it effectively, they just assume that if you throw more on there, it's going to make things better. And again, I just have to say it one more time to everybody out there who is saying, oh, you just hated this movie because you're a Marvel fanboy. To everyone out there saying that, I'll admit it, I do like the Marvel films. I think that overall they've been really darn good. However, they do have problems. Heck, some of the movies actually have a lot of problems to them. I'm not blind, I do see that. However, this movie here, it's got all the problems of all the Marvel films magnified exponentially. It's got all the problems of Iron Man 2. It's got all the problems of Thor 2. It's got all the problems of Age of Ultron. It has all those things that you have complained about in those Marvel films, and they are exploded all over this screen with a giant dark paintbrush. Stopping the movie just to set up sequels, bad editing, jumping from one thing to another with no mention of what just happened or why it was important, characters not bothering to actually talk to each other about big important issues, cramming way too many plots into one movie, love interests who are there only to be rescued, villains with no personalities or uneven personalities that are painful to watch. All those problems in those films are indeed all over this movie, and if you're going into this movie defending it while pointing an accusing finger at those movies, I got news for you. I'm not the fanboy here. Okay, I've said everything that I can. All that's left is for me to give this my final score. And my final score for this movie is 1 Batman training with a tire. Yes, we all saw that scene in the trailer in which Batman is training by pulling a tire, hitting a tire with a hammer, doing pull-ups with a tire around his legs. And we looked at them and we went, oh man, that's really cool. But when you actually stop and think about it, you think about how much money Batman is spending and how many resources are at his fingertips, you realize, oh, you could be doing way better. And that's what this movie is. It's something that kind of looks cool, and Ben Affleck is trying his hardest to pull this thing along, but in the end, it could have been so much better, and it's just a lifeless hunk of rubber. So okay, that's it everybody. Thank you very much for watching this. I'm very sorry to anybody if I upset you with this review. Like I said, I know there are people passionate about this, but I've been living kind of in fear of the Man of Steel fans and the Batman fans for a long time. I have. But one day, one of my followers, who actually comes into my store, actually came up to me and said, dude, don't worry about the Man of Steel fans. People follow you because they want to know what you have to think. So be honest with it. And I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. So I had to come in here and I had to be honest about this. This is how I felt about this film. But as I said, I don't want that to take away from anybody else if you enjoyed it. If you liked it, go for it, man. What am I? I'm just some idiot on the internet. But I thank you guys very much. And, you know, I always end this by telling you guys, share this, subscribe, share all around the internet. If you guys could really do that with this or any of my other videos, that would be fantastic, because not only is it the best way to help out this channel, but also, as I said, any time in which I talk about anything in the DC Cinematic Universe and the problems with that, I can see my subscriber count plummet. So I'm expecting something big from this one. So if you guys could share this around the web to try and help make up for that, I would really appreciate it. And if you guys want to see more from me relating to Batman vs. Superman, there is that spoiler talk that I did. It's right there. It's just an hour of me and my wife talking about all of our problems with this film. Full spoilers are on. You can click it right there. Or if you want to see me just totally geek out about the whole idea of Batman vs. Superman, even in the comics, there is the Thorgi Theory episode that I did in which I dissect all the fights they've had in the comics, and I talk about who really would win between Batman vs. Superman. And no spoilers for this movie, but I kind of called it. So there's that. But thank you guys very much for tuning in again. I appreciate all the love that you guys give. I'm really gonna need it on this one, but thank you very much. Come back next time.